The Park Avenue Church of Christ has a long history in Denison, dating back to the early 1900s. And for much of the 20th century, the church called the corner of Armstrong and Hull their home, and was known as the Armstrong Avenue Church of Christ. Despite the natural sentimental attachment to that location, in the 1980s it had become increasingly clear that the church's vision of growth necessitated moving the congregation to a new location.
There was a lot of good memories in that old building for people my age, people like me, older people who had grown up in that old building. Because there was a very sentimental attachment to that old building, but it was time to go. I mean, it had served its purpose, and that old building wasn't the church. The church was going to meet on Park Avenue.
Andy Russell, a third-generation member of the church, was only 8 years old in 1987 and has fond memories of the old building.
No, I did have a whole lot of memories of the Armstrong building. Mainly, I remember the back room. They had the big painting of Goliath on the wall. And I'm pretty sure when they tore that down, that painting was still there.
Although the church had a rich and memorable history at that location, the building on Armstrong and Hull was needing costly renovations. And even if renovated, the building was landlocked, prohibiting any additional growth.
We couldn't grow any longer in that old building. We had bought up all the property around that we could for parking lots. The building was crumbling apart. There was mold and mildew in the basement to the point that you couldn't go in there and use it. During the harsh winter time, the sump pump would come on and it would make an ice rink out of the corner of Hull and Armstrong. It was just time to go. I was carried into that building. I always thought I'd be carried out. But even I knew it was time to go.
That old building was falling down. There wasn't any way we could expand over there.
The building at Armstrong was an old building. Part of it was even not usable. And so there was a basement to it, and part of it was just unsafe. So that's one thing. The other thing is we had a very limited amount of classroom space, and we had a very limited amount of parking space.
Well, the building itself was in need of a lot of repair, and there had been a lot of problems with the basement. And the surrounding area, is, like most areas in town as they get older, was getting older. And there was limitations there toward expanding.
So the decision was made to make a move. The first order of business was to find a location. The church had purchased land on Crawford Street near the corner of Lillis Lane and targeted that site as the church's new home.
And so we purchased land out on Crawford Street, held on to that for a few years, decided that 5 acres was not going to be adequate for what we wanted.
The other location we had on Crawford Street at the property for some time, we decided it was too small.
We had that 5 acres out there on Crawford Street. Beautiful location. All paid for. We had done such good work. The architect,
We thought.
architect, I don't think he made on his 3rd visit or something like that. He said, by the way, that 5 acres is too small. And we go, oh no, what are we going to do now?
Eventually, a more ideal location was found on the corner of Highland Park and Park Avenue. Back in the 1980s, that area was largely undeveloped, and Park Avenue was just a narrow and seldom traveled road. But the area was targeted for growth, and so it was decided to move to the corner of Highland Park and Park Avenue.
Sandy Thomas and her real estate company had found this property, and it was much more property than we wanted, but or needed. But we determined there was a way to divide the property up so that we could have part.
Actually, finding the land was the easiest part. The next order of business was funding the new building. Although the church had created a building fund, as well as having funds from the sale of the land on Crawford and the sale of the Armstrong building, there was still a lot of money to be raised. And then there was the prospect of a sizable mortgage once the move was made. Many hours of anxious meetings were spent counting the cost, and although there was resistance by some, the leadership of the church felt this was what God was calling them to do. It was going to be a leap of faith, but they forged on with their vision.
We had a goal to raise, I think, this sounds kind of low today, but I believe then our goal was to raise $100,000.
We had the special contribution on Sunday, and Bill Russell came out, Bill and somebody counted, and Bill came out with a big old grin on his face. I said, how do we do? He said, oh, we're going to make it. We're going to do this. Land on Crawford, we gave $25,000 for it. So, again, the hand of God. Sold it for $100,000. Then we started moving, and it was like, what are we going to do with that old building? Because, that thing was rough. Sandra sold it for $100,000 and got the Citizens Bank to finance it. I've thought about this a lot, and I'm going to tell you what, every hurdle, every reason not to do it that came up, every time you could think, everything you could think of as, oh, it's just too hard. God reached down and touched it, and it worked. There was no turning back. There was no stopping us. We were going to do this. You can't imagine all the hurdles that came up. And God was driving this great big train, and if you got in front of it, you're just going to get run over. Because it's going to happen.
On November 16, 1986, the congregation met for a potluck dinner. And then it was out to the land for an official groundbreaking.
I remember a little ceremony for groundbreaking where we all came out and had a shovel, and went through the process.
Among the groundbreakers that day was an aged former elder Argolis Anderson. Argolis was an early visionary of the move, and at the ceremony, he quoted what has become a theme scripture for the church, Psalms 133.
Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that came down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that went down to the skirts of his garments. As the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore.
Ground was broken and construction was underway.
I remember coming out with my dad when they were building the building. I remember at the time thinking that it didn't look very big, and I thought this just, there's not much here. And what really blew my mind was when we came out and watched them put the big beams up in the auditorium. And that was pretty cool. I remember watching that. And I came out with Dad and we sat in the back of the truck and watched that for a while. That was pretty wild to watch.
After a year of construction, on December 20th, 1987, the Park Avenue Church of Christ hosted its first worship service, and a new era had begun.
Had it not been the Lord who was on our side, had it not been the Lord who was on our side.
My thoughts when I originally walked into the building was, wow, this is really new and really nice, and I don't want to touch anything because I don't want to break anything.
Blessed be the Lord who would not give us up. Blessed be the Lord for his unfailing.
Most of them up there, all of us were just ecstatic that we had done it because there was some real doubts.
Our help is in the name of the Lord. Blessed be the Lord.
Where'd they get that?
I've thought about this a lot, and I'm going to tell you what, every hurdle, every reason not to do it that came up, every time you could think, everything you could think of it, oh, it's just too hard. God reached down and touched him.
Had it not been the Lord who was on our side, blessed be the Lord.
You know, while this is a very joyous occasion and we have reason to celebrate, I think we need to remind ourselves that we have only reached the milestone. And this is not the ending, it is the beginning, as Anthony pointed out in his sermon this morning. And there's yet a lot of work to be done. It is the beginning of a new era for this congregation. And I think we need to look at it as the beginning for new opportunities. Certainly there are a lot of opportunities out there in the future. They will come only to those who put forth an effort. And I would think that we need to admonish ourselves and each other that today is indeed the beginning.
The snare is broken and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord.
Our help is in the name of the Lord.
Our help is in the name of the Lord. Blessed be the Lord.